What? This isn't a Let's Play video. Did you click the wrong link? Don't worry, my crispy friends, this is just a little deviation from the norm. A buddy of mine had asked me about my airbrushes, and I was making a video for him to answer his questions. And as I was setting up, I realized that others might actually be interested in as well, so might as well share it with everybody. I mean, what's the point of having a YouTube channel if you can't share things? Anyway, excuse me, still getting over that cold. So what are we talking about today? Well, for anyone who's watched enough of my videos or follows my Twitter, you'll know that I am a huge Warhammer fan. I paint the models constantly, and as part of that, I make use of airbrushes to save myself some time and effort. And this is a review and or comparison of the three brushes I use. And, okay, well, not exactly three brushes. Let me explain. I started with an Iwata HP-CS. And 0.5 millimeter. I always do that, but this was my workhorse for the longest time. And as my skills improved, I wanted to make use of an airbrush with a finer tip so that I could start doing smaller detail work. And I eventually settled on the Harder and Steenbeck, S-T-E-E-N, Steenbeck Infinity CR Plus, and this is in 0.15 millimeter. And I adore both of these brushes. These are great brushes. And I used them extensively for a very, very long time. But recently, I got this wild bug up my ass to upgrade my HP-CS. And I don't know why. I just wound up convincing myself that my painting had gotten good enough to move up a little bit. And after some searching around, I actually wound up purchasing this, a Grex Genesis XGi in 0.5 millimeter. And this was to replace the HP-CS. So this is ultimately a review of all three brushes, as well as a comparison of what you get for your money with each brush. So let's start off with the HP-CS. This was the least expensive of the three brushes. You can get them on Amazon for about $150, but I know for a fact you can pick them up cheaper at Hobby Lobby, especially if you use one of their 40%, well, only if you use one of their little 40% off coupons, which is how I got mine. And this is a brush that pretty much every pro figure painter will recommend, and there's a good reason for that. This brush is a pickup truck. No frills, no fancy bling, just a brush that will eat pretty much any paint that you put through it. The trigger tension is actually easily adjustable, and it has the access to the needle to help clear clogs. And I will admit, however, that while a lot of people do like this particular feature, I've never actually had to use it. So that's just a personal preference thing there. It has a single cup style needle protector that just screws on, and disassembly and cleaning are easy enough as there aren't too many nooks or crannies to deal with. You can get a needle modification kits from Iwata to change the size of the needle, but again, I prefer to have dedicated brushes for various needle sizes, and I'll explain that a bit later, or why that is a bit later. If I had a complaint about the HP-CS, it's that even though there aren't too many nooks and crannies, there's still a couple, and boy, and they are just a bitch to deal with. There's one area that I can't help but get paint into when I'm doing a lot of work, especially, and short of complete disassembly and letting it soak for a couple hours, this area will get gunked up, and when it dries, the needle it's unmovable. I can't even pull the needle out with pliers. What I have to do is soak it in solvent for about a half an hour just to be able to move the needle or even remove it. And the area is basically between the pot and the triggers, this little area right here. And paint's not really supposed to get in there, and in my other brushes they have seals to kind of minimize that. It doesn't prevent it. It's a fact of any airbrush. It's going to happen. It's always going to happen, but it's minimized, and I can go a lot longer with these brushes before it becomes an issue than with this one. Beyond that, HP-CS is really forgiving. It'll spray surprisingly thick paints that haven't been thinned correctly. The 0.5 millimeter nozzle can create a fine enough line when properly thinned and balanced with the air pressure and so on and so forth. And with my own skill or relative lack thereof, I can get a line about like a fine tip Sharpie marker. And ultimately, there's not much else to say about this particular brush because there's just not much to this particular brush. It's a great starter brush, however, because of how forgiving it is, and the price point is really good. But here's the thing, for about $20 more, you can get this brush. This is the Grex Genesis XGi. And the who now? If you ask 100 airbrush people if they've ever heard of Grex, I'd be willing to bet that only a couple of them ever actually heard of them. And that's a shame, really, because pound for pound, this airbrush is one of the best freaking deals I've ever found. First off, the quality is top-notch, but that's not saying much. Okay, let me set that back. It's not saying that this quality is top-notch. It's not saying much because all of these brushes are just fantastic. But the thing is, when you see something that comes in with a similar price point with another item, but has far more options and features, there's two reasons for that. A, they either sacrifice the quality to allow for the extra stuff, or B, they just have a better process. There's also C, then that's the original one is overpriced, but I don't think that applies here. And with that in mind, I think it really comes down to the better process option. And not to bore you with business theory, but even if something like $20 price difference in terms of mass production can actually mean a world of difference in the end product. So what do you get for your 20 bucks? First off, you get this nice silicone grip here, the nice squishy silicone grip, and it's all removable, and without it you just have, you know, a standard airbrush that's almost indistinguishable from others. But why anyone would ever remove the grip, honestly, is I have no idea, because boy, it makes holding this thing comfortable as hell, especially when you're doing a long project. You never really know how much you needed something until you actually get it, you know. And I should mention that the grips, let me take this for a moment. I'm gonna reach across. There we go. This grip actually stops it from fitting properly into my airbrush holder. You see, it just barely, it kind of really wiggles in there. It doesn't lock in like, say, with my Iwata, where it's, you know, it's in there. So it stays in there, but a good jiggle could knock it out, or at least I feel like a good jiggle is not. I don't want to test it because I don't want to risk damaging the brush. But anyway, oddly enough, Grex doesn't even make a airbrush holder that this fits into properly. Go figure. But anyway, you also get 3 different paint wells. And if you're doing, you get a small, medium, and a large one. If you're doing a large project, like if you were painting some of those battle train tiles that Games Workshop makes, the larger pot is great. I stay with the small one just because just makes, you know, I rarely use much more paint than what will be in here. But also being able to remove the pot. Yep. Trying to do this in front of a camera. Being able to remove the pot makes it so much easier to clean. When you're doing a nice big scrubbing. I do, you know, quick cleans between paint, but between major projects I pull everything apart and clean it and put it in the sonic cleaner and stuff like that. But being able to remove that pot makes it so much easier. But excuse me, my favorite feature though is one that makes you say, why the hell doesn't everybody do that? And it's this. Check this out. See if I can't do it with it. That is the needle protector, and it's held on with a magnet. That is so awesome. So it just pops right on and off, and the back is shaped in a way so you can store the extra tip. You get 2 different types of tips, and you can have one and then store the other one on the back so that it's always ready to go. And I adore that. And you got your typical cup size, and you got the exposed one that makes it easier to get to the needle, and so on and so forth. There's all kinds of other places where you can find the why wasn't everyone thinking of that kind of stuff as well. The biggest one is the needle, actually. Let me pull this off here, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it on camera very well, and if I move it up, it gets really off, and my autofocus really kind of is funky. But anyway, if you look, there are 5 notches on the back of this, and this is a 0.5 millimeter needle. If I had a 0.7 millimeter needle, there would be 7 notches on there. And want to guess how many notches are on a 2 millimeter needle? If you said 2, give yourself a hand. If you said something else, I'd highly recommend brushing up on your pattern recognition skills. These little notches make it so easy to keep track of your needle sizes, especially when you get the various conversion kits that Grex sells. You don't want to put the wrong size needle in because it can destroy the nozzle. And there's another feature that I don't use often on on the Grex, oddly. I use it extensively on the Harder and Steenbeck, but this one does have a thing where the back of it screws here, and what that does is that will act as a stop to keep you from pulling the trigger back too far. And so what you can do is figure out how much flow you need, and then you can lock that in and work quickly without fear of accidentally just blasting a big spray on there. Now, with just practice and trigger discipline, it becomes a non-issue for the most part, but it's still, especially when you're doing detail work, really fine detail work, it's nice to have that in place. Let's see here. My biggest gripe, sorry, I was just looking at my notes real quick. My biggest gripe about the Grex is that even with the protector off, the shape of this makes it really difficult to get in there and clean the needle. I actually keep just an old toothbrush here, and I'll just kind of get in there and use that to get the stuff off. But other than that, that's really it. That's really my only gripe about that and the stand issue. There's another observation though, and it's not a gripe, it's an observation. It's that the airflow through the Grex seems to be far more efficient than the airflow through the Iwata. And I usually keep my HP-CS at about 10 psi when I'm working on base coating and such. And when I tried to paint with the Grex at 10 psi, it actually performed like the Iwata would have at 25 psi. So I find I really have to crank down the air pressure when I'm using the Grex. Now that's not a bad thing, mind you. It's just I'm not exactly sure what that means beyond that. It's just something to be aware of. And now the main event. This, I'll move these out of the way a little bit here, give this one front stage. Look how pretty that is. This was a birthday present to myself last year, and it was some of the best money I've thrown away in a long time. The Harder and Steenbeck Infinity CR Plus is what this is. It is the Mercedes or BMW of airbrushes, because it's expensive and German. And it came in at a whopping $320. And you can see exactly where that extra price comes from. The materials are just top notch. The coatings are, it doesn't scratch, it doesn't chip. It just is, it's hard to really explain in a video and such just how different this feels. It actually feels much more solid. Precise other words than these two. It's a large step up from the Iwata. It's a smaller step up from the Grex, but the manufacturing of it is just insane. You get 3 different kind of needle detectors. You get the open side, which is great, the cup side, and then there's one that's like a skeleton cup. I think I have it over here. Hang on for a second. Here we go. I'll show you this. Look at my professionalism, not having all this ready. Here we go. Just dump that out over there, make a bunch of noise. There we go. Yeah, it has this like skeleton one that I have never actually used, which is why I didn't have it out and available. I had almost forgotten about it. Anyway, comes with 2 paint pots, unlike the Grex, which has 3. This one and a larger one that's about the same size as the Iwata. I keep the small one because I'm always out doing detail work. And with this tiny 0.15 millimeter needle, I get a line that's smaller than a ballpoint pen. And let's see what else here. The favorite. Okay, I talked about being able to do the preset stuff on here. The Infinity one has one that's really awesome. You'll notice here it has actual number. I'm trying to get where the glare isn't on there. Is it? Yeah, you can actually set it. You can go over and over, but once you set it, you push it in to lock it, and you can actually see it keep the thing in place, and then it's just a matter of pop it back out, and then you've got the full range of motion again. So it's very easy to switch between the restricted and unrestricted. And unlike the Grex, you don't have to constantly screw it and unscrew it. You just pop it and pop it in and out. Cleaning the Infinity, though, is a bit of a chore. That's my biggest gripe. That's my biggest gripe about this one, is that you need a special tool to disassemble it. Because first off, you pull this part out, then you have to have a separate tool to actually undo that, because it's very difficult to get normally. And because it's so small, it's very easy to bend the tip of this thing. I have stabbed myself with that little tip so many times, but it does have a metric ton of O-rings and seals all through this, so it means you don't actually have to clean it as much as you would with the Grex or the Iwata, but when you do clean it, it is a bitch. And you got to be very careful not to damage the O-rings, because if you do, they aren't exactly cheap to replace. It is much like a Mercedes or a BMW in that case. When it works great, but when it breaks, when it needs maintenance, the parts are a bit more. I wouldn't recommend buying this brush as a first brush. I would, heartily recommend either one of these two, but this one is much like me. This is when you've got the hang of it, because it is so unforgiving. If you do not have your paint thinning technique down to absolute perfection, to where you can just blam and it's thinned perfectly, you are going to have a bad time. This will not take any paint that isn't just thin the way it's supposed to. That tiny little 0.15 millimeter needle and nozzle, there is absolutely no room for error on those. And that is something that, again, paint, I have said it to many people, but learning how to thin your airbrush paints is the secret to airbrushing. And so getting this one, it's better to get something that's, I'd say, like the Grex, that's forgiving but not completely forgiving, so that you develop good habits. And that's the thing, develop good habits before you move to this one, because it's easier to maintain a good habit than to unlearn a bad habit. And I almost had to unlearn a bad habit because I spent so much time with this super forgiving one. But let's see here. Anyway, beyond that, it doesn't matter which one of these three you go with. They are all fantastic, and this isn't go out and buy this one, it's the best airbrush ever, you'll be, and that's my final thing. Actually, if you're looking for this one to tell you which one to buy, I'm sorry, you're going to be a little disappointed here, because each one of these is absolutely fantastic. I would gladly use any one of these brushes, and I still do. Again, I've replaced my Iwata with my Grex, but if for whatever reason I had to send the Grex for warranty work or whatever, and I had to switch back to my Iwata, I wouldn't be sitting there like, oh, I had to work out with the junk again. No, this is a fantastic brush. And if you have an Iwata, you've got a fantastic brush. But if you're looking to upgrade, here's the ladder. Definitely, I would highly recommend upgrading to the Grex if you're looking to step up a little bit. If you're looking to step up a lot, take a look at the Harder and Steenbeck line. They are all fantastic brushes. And thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for humoring me with my little expansion beyond video game playthroughs and so on and so forth. I expect to see a little bit more of this. If you like this and you do want to see more of this and maybe some painting tutorials and so on and so forth, give me a little thumbs up down there or a comment, or if you have any questions about either of these brushes, let me know in the comments. I will gladly answer them. If you definitely want to keep track of what I'm doing, hit that subscribe button. That would be great. And if you could do me one more favor, if you could have a nice day, I'd appreciate it. See you next time.